The twin suns of Pandora Nine burned across a golden sky, lighting the cliffs where the Sky Academy stood, a place where the proud alien race called the Ikrani trained to master their giant flying beasts, the Ikrans. The academy towered above the storm clouds. Carved into the mountain rock, banners of deep blue fluttering in the high wind, the air smelled of fire dust and ozone, and the cries of Ikrans echoed like thunder across the peaks. Among the students stood Saraya, a young Ikrani pilot with silver blue skin and bright yellow eyes. Her wings shimmered under the sunlight. She was confident, fearless, and proud of her people. Today was no normal day, for a human had joined the academy, something that had never happened before. The human's name was Eli Ward, a former Air Force pilot from Earth. Tall, quiet, and carrying the kind of calm that made others curious, he wore a plain flight suit and carried himself like someone used to war. Not training, the alien cadets whispered and laughed, some mocking, some angry that an outsider dared step into their sacred skies. During the first lesson, the flight instructor spoke loudly. To ride an Ikran, you must prove your worth. He said, you must show no fear, and your heart must be one with the sky. Eli listened carefully, his gaze steady, while Saraya crossed her arms. Smirking, when the training ended, Saraya walked up to him, her tone sharp like a blade. So, human, she said, you think your metal planes make you a real pilot? Eli didn't answer. He simply looked at her, calm and unreadable. She laughed loudly. Her friends joining in. Then prove it, she challenged, pointing toward the storm cliffs beyond the academy. Ride an Ikran, if you dare, the crowd gasped. No one ever made such a reckless dare. The cliffs were forbidden, filled with untamed beasts that even trained pilots avoided. Eli's face didn't change. He looked at the roaring sky, lightning flashing far away. Saraya tilted her head, mocking. What's wrong, human? Lost your courage? He finally spoke, his voice quiet but strong. On my world, we didn't ask permission to touch the sky. Then he walked past her, heading toward the cliff path, his boots echoing on the stone, the crowd silent as they watched him disappear into the growing storm. Saraya blinked, confused. He's not really going, is he? One of her friends whispered. But he was, and no one stopped him. Rain began to fall, the twin suns fading behind thick clouds. Thunder rolled across the mountains as Eli climbed the ancient path, his mind calm, his body steady. He remembered the days on Earth, the missions, the war, the crash that had taken his crew, and how he'd sworn never to fear the sky again. Down below, the alien trainees gathered at the academy edge, watching the storm swallow the human. He's going to die, someone said, but Saraya kept watching, her laughter fading into unease. There was something strange about the human silence, something too focused, too brave. At the top of the cliffs, Eli reached the plateau where wild Ikrans nested, their wings as wide as ships, their eyes glowing in the dark. They shrieked at his presence, circling in warning. He stood there, soaked by rain, lightning striking nearby, his breath steady. One massive Ikran landed before him, its scales shimmering purple and black, its eyes burning gold, from the academy far away. Saraya could barely see him now, just a small figure standing before a monster of the sky. She whispered softly, almost to herself, he's crazy. The wind howled, tearing at his clothes. Eli didn't move. He raised one hand slowly. His eyes locked on the creature. The Ikran hissed, snapping its jaws, its tail slamming the ground. The storm roared louder. Yet Eli stood firm. In that moment, the alien students watching from afar saw something they didn't understand. The human wasn't afraid. He was listening, feeling the wind, the rhythm, the heartbeat of the storm. Saraya felt her chest tighten, her mocking smile gone. She could no longer look away. The thunder boomed as Eli took one step closer. The Ikran leaned forward, breathing hot air over him. Lightning flashed again, illuminating both man and beast in white light. For a second, it looked like they were mirror images, two beings from different worlds bound by the same courage. Then the Ikran roared so loud the mountains shook, spreading its wings, and the sky split open with lightning. The others screamed, but Saraya's voice caught in her throat, because in that final flash of light, she saw something impossible. The Ikran did not strike him. It paused, watching, as if testing his soul. And Eli didn't flinch, not even once. He simply whispered through the rain, "I'm not afraid of the sky." The screen fades to black, the storm's echo lingering, leaving the audience breathless. The human had accepted the challenge, but what came next would change the skies of Pandora Nine forever. The storm grew stronger as Eli Ward climbed higher into the Forbidden Cliffs, rain hitting his face like shards of glass, wind roaring around him, each step echoing with the sound of determination. Below him, the Sky Academy faded into mist, and only thunder answered his courage. He had no wings, no training with Ikrans, no sacred bond like the alien pilots had, but he had something else, the spirit of a soldier who had faced death before and walked away. Far behind, Saraya followed in secret, her wings folded tight against the wind. She told herself she just wanted to see him fail, to prove that humans didn't belong in the sky. But deep down she was curious about the strange calm she had seen in his eyes. The cliffs were sacred. No Ikrani had entered them without permission of the elders. The place was said to belong only to the wild Ikran's creatures that could tear apart a ship in seconds. Lightning struck nearby, lighting up the dark peaks. Eli didn't stop. His boots slipped on wet stone, but his grip stayed strong. At the edge of the world, he found a wide plateau, a nest of massive Ikrans resting in the shadows, their wings folded, eyes glowing faintly like embers in the night. They sensed him immediately, a foreign presence. A human scent, several hissed and rose, stretching their wings, their cries shaking the air. Eli stopped at the center, breathing slowly, heart steady. He spoke quietly. "You don't know me," he said, "but I've flown through storms worse than this." His voice disappeared in the thunder, yet one Ikran moved closer, curious. Its scales shimmered with violet light, lightning reflecting on its skin like fire dancing over metal. Saraya landed behind a rock, watching in silence, her heart racing. This was madness. No one stood so close to a wild Ikran and lived. Eli slowly removed his gloves, stretching out his bare hand, the cold wind slicing his skin. The Ikran lowered its head, sniffing, growling softly. When it opened its mouth, Saraya nearly screamed. It could have swallowed him whole, but Eli didn't step back. He stood still, eyes locked with the creature. The air around them changed. The lightning stopped for a moment, and the wind softened, as if the world was holding its breath. Eli whispered, "I'm not your enemy." The Ikran tilted its head, its golden eyes reflecting the small human before it. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other, and something invisible passed between them, a spark, a recognition of shared strength. Then another roar echoed through the canyon. A second, larger Ikran appeared from the storm, wings wide as the horizon. Its cry shook the stones loose from the cliffs. Saraya gasped, "No, that's the Skybreaker, the king of the storm." It landed beside the first Ikran, glaring at Eli, its scales dark as midnight, lightning crawling across its body like veins of fire. Even the first Ikran backed away in fear. Eli stood alone before the king of the storm. He could feel the creature's power vibrating through the air. His instincts screamed to run, but his mind said no. He had faced explosions, death, betrayal, and loss. Fear was an old friend, and he would not let it rule him now. Saraya stepped out from hiding, shouting through the wind, "Human! Run, you'll be killed." But Eli only smiled faintly. "Not today," he said. He walked forward one step at a time, until the Skybreaker's shadow swallowed him completely. The great beast lowered its head, eyes burning like suns, studying him. Then, with a deafening roar, it struck its wings, smashing the ground beside him. Rocks shattering, lightning bursting into the sky, Eli was thrown to the ground. But he rose again, coughing, still facing the creature. Saraya could barely believe what she was seeing. The human refused to kneel, refused to break. The skybreaker growled, then opened its wings again, this time not in anger, but in challenge. Eli understood. It was testing him. He picked up a shard of broken rock, holding it like a symbol, and drew a line across his arm. Blood mixing with rain, he raised his bleeding hand toward the Ikran, shouting, "If courage is your language, then I speak it." The storm exploded around them, lightning striking the ground in a circle, wind tearing through the cliffs. The skybreaker roared once more, shaking the mountains, and lowered its head slowly, touching its crest against Eli's hand. The moment it happened, Saraya's knees weakened. She felt energy pulse through the air. The forbidden bond had formed. A wild Ikran had accepted a human. The other Ikrans screamed, not in rage, but in awe, their cries rising into the storm like a song of respect. Saraya fell to her knees, eyes wide, whispering, "Impossible. No human has ever." Eli placed his hand on the Ikran's head, whispering, "I'm not afraid of the sky." The storm began to clear, the clouds opening above them. Sunlight broke through, shining on the human and his new companion. Saraya stood in silence, realizing that everything she had believed about humans was wrong. He had done what even her best warriors feared to try. As the last rumble of thunder faded, Eli looked back toward the academy far below. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He simply said softly, "It's time to fly." And the skybreaker spread its wings wide, wind swirling, ready for the flight that would change the history of both their worlds. The storm had quieted, but the sky of Pandora Nine still rumbled with power. Gray clouds swirling above the peaks, as if watching what had just happened on the plateau. Eli Ward stood beside the enormous Ikran, the skybreaker, his hands still resting against the creature's warm scales. Their breathing sensed, slow and calm, as if they shared the same heartbeat. Rain dripped from Eli's hair. Lightning no longer struck, and for the first time, there was peace between human and beast. From behind the rocks, Saraya stepped out slowly, her wings trembling. She couldn't believe her eyes. No one in the history of the Ikrani had ever bonded with a wild Ikran without dying. But the human stood there, alive, steady, and unafraid. The skybreaker's golden eyes turned toward her, and she froze, her instincts screaming to kneel. But the beast didn't attack. Instead, it looked back at Eli. As if waiting for his command, Eli spoke softly, "Easy now, friend." His voice was calm, confident, yet filled with respect. He could feel the creature's mind in his images flashing before his eyes. Endless skies, battles, memories of old wars fought by the Ikrani long before humans came. For a moment, their souls touched, sharing courage and pain. A silent understanding that went beyond species. Saraya walked closer, her boots splashing in the wet stone. "You ... You made a bond," she whispered. Eli looked at her, his eyes calm but tired. "I didn't make it," he said quietly. "It chose me." The skybreaker snorted, wings spreading slightly. As if agreeing with him, Saraya stared in awe, her pride melting into something else, admiration. She had mocked him, challenged him, expected to watch him fall. But instead, she was witnessing the birth of a legend. Eli turned to the creature, slowly stepping toward its shoulder. The skybreaker lowered itself, a gesture that meant only one thing among the Ikrani. It was allowing him to ride. Saraya's eyes widened. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible. You're not trained. You'll be killed." Eli placed a hand on the creature's neck, feeling its pulse beneath his fingers. "Then I'll die flying," he said, and with one swift motion, he climbed onto the Ikran's back, gripping the natural ridges of its scales. The skybreaker roared, spreading its wings wide, each beat of wind pushing Saraya backward. The force shook the mountain. Rocks falling from the cliff sides, Eli leaned forward, his heartbeat matching the rhythm of the creature. The Ikran crouched, muscles coiled, and then launched into the sky. The wind screamed past them, rain turning to mist. The world spinning into motion. Saraya covered her face, watching in disbelief as the human and the Ikran vanished into the clouds. Up in the storm, Eli could barely see. Lightning flashed around him, his hands tight on the creature's scales, but instead of fear, he felt freedom. The same feeling he had lost years ago when his ship fell on Earth. Now it had returned wild, untamed, pure. The skybreaker's roar echoed through the heavens, a cry of rebirth. Together, they dove through the clouds, twisting, spinning, the wind roaring in their ears. Eli laughed for the first time in years. The sound swallowed by the storm, he felt alive again, not as a soldier or a survivor, but as something new, a part of the sky itself. Down below, Saraya watched the flashes of lightning, each strike revealing their silhouettes, dancing through the clouds. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but awe. For centuries, her people believed only those born with wings could touch the heavens. But a single human had just proved them wrong. When the Ikran returned, it descended with grace. Landing softly before her, Eli dismounted, his legs shaking slightly, but his face calm. The skybreaker folded its wings. Lowering its head to him, a gesture of loyalty, Saraya stepped forward slowly, her voice trembling. "How did you do that?" Eli smiled faintly. "I didn't control it," he said. "I trusted it." For a long moment, the two stood there, the sound of rain falling around them. Saraya's pride broke into something humble and pure. She lowered her head slightly, a gesture of respect in her culture. "Forgive me," she said softly. "I was wrong about you." Eli looked at her kindly. "You weren't wrong," he said. "You just hadn't seen a human fly." The skybreaker growled softly, stretching its wings again. Lightning flashed once more, but this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a sign, bright and clear, lighting up the valley for all to see. The alien students from the academy could see the glow from miles away, their voices filled with shock and wonder. Saraya watched as Eli turned to face the horizon, his hand resting gently on the creature's neck. He didn't look like a stranger anymore. He looked like someone who belonged to the sky. And for the first time in her life, she felt small, not because she was weak, but because she had witnessed something far greater than pride. Above them, the storm finally broke, revealing two suns rising over the silver clouds. The Ikran spread its wings once again, its roar shaking the heavens, and in that light, Saraya saw the truth her people had forgotten. That courage, not wings, is what makes a true pilot. The first light of dawn spread across Pandora Nine, turning the wet cliffs into rivers of gold. The skybreaker stood at the edge of the plateau, wings half open, steam rising from its scales, its breath glowing faintly in the morning mist. Beside it stood Eli Ward, the first human ever to bond with an Ikran, his eyes fixed on the endless horizon. Down below, the alien academy was in chaos, alarms echoing through the towers, students running to the edge to witness what none of them thought possible. From the grand balcony, the alien commander shouted, "Bring him back. No human can fly a wild Ikran." But the skybreaker ignored the cries. Its gaze locked on the rising suns. Saraya stood nearby, wind in her hair, watching Eli climb once more onto the creature's back. Her heart raced between fear and admiration. Part of her wanted to stop him, but another part whispered that history was about to be made. Eli fastened the leather straps left from ancient riders. Feeling the pulse beneath the Ikran's hide, the beast trembled not from anger, but excitement, its instincts sensing the call of the open air. "Ready?" Eli whispered. The skybreaker rumbled deep in its chest, a sound that vibrated through the rock. Saraya stepped closer, shouting over the wind, "You don't understand the flight path. The updraft will kill you." Eli looked back at her, smiling faintly. "Then I'll ride the wind differently." And with that, the skybreaker crouched low, its wings pressing against the ground. For one silent second, all sound faded, even the thunder. Then, with a roar that shook the heavens, it leapt. The cliffs shattered beneath their takeoff, dust and light exploding outward. Eli was thrown back slightly, gripping the ridges tightly. His heart pounding, they rose fast. Higher than the towers, higher than the storm itself. The wind screamed, tearing at his jacket. Freezing his skin, below, the academy grew small, until it looked like a handful of glowing stones in the fog. Lightning flickered in the distance, and the clouds spun like rivers of smoke. But Eli didn't flinch. He leaned forward, matching the Ikran's rhythm, feeling every twist of its muscles, every beat of its wings. For the first time in ages, the skybreaker was free. It roared, slicing through the clouds, twisting through the air with impossible grace. Eli's laughter mixed with the wind, raw and alive. He remembered flying old warplanes over the ruins of Earth, the sound of engines, the burning skies. But this was flight in its purest form. No machine, no metal, no boundaries, only trust, wind, and will. Saraya flew after them on her own Ikran, though her wings struggled to keep up. She shouted into the wind, "You're insane, human!" But even her own Ikran seemed to slow, bowing slightly as it felt the skybreaker's dominance. She realized this was no ordinary flight. It was a test of hearts. The sky itself was watching, waiting to see who truly belonged to it. Eli closed his eyes for a brief moment, breathing in the thin, cold air. He could feel the skybreaker's mind reaching out, showing him flashes of memory, the ancient battles of the Ikrani, the first riders, the fall of their kings, the endless struggle to master the wind. He understood then that the bond between them was not about power. It was about faith, the kind that ignores fear. A sudden blast of wind hit them from below, sending them tumbling. Eli's hands nearly slipped. Saraya gasped from far behind. The Ikran dove straight into the storm lair, lightning sparking across its wings. Eli shouted, "Come on, show me what you've got." The skybreaker roared, twisting downward like a comet. The air blazing with light, they vanished into the clouds, leaving trails of fire behind them, down at the academy. Everyone looked up, some praying, others frozen in awe. The headmaster whispered, "No one survives the eye of the storm." But above, inside the clouds, Eli and the Ikran fought the wind together, moving as one. Every second felt like eternity, the sky itself roaring with rage. Then suddenly the clouds broke. They burst out of the storm, sunlight pouring around them like molten gold. The skybreaker spread its wings wide, lightning fading from its body. Eli raised his arm high, shouting into the light. The entire world below saw it, the human and the beast, shining like a new star against the dawn. Saraya reached the break in the clouds, eyes wide, tears streaming down her face. "He's flying," she whispered. "He's truly flying." The skybreaker made a wide circle over the academy, wings casting a shadow over thousands below. Students and teachers knelt in disbelief, even the elders, who once forbid humans from touching an Ikran, bowed their heads. Eli guided the creature lower, his movements steady and sure, every twist perfectly balanced. He wasn't fighting the wind anymore, he was dancing with it. When they landed, the ground trembled, dust swirling around them like smoke. The skybreaker folded its wings and bowed low before Eli for a long moment. Silence filled the entire academy. Then, one by one, the Ikrani pilots dropped to one knee, honoring the man who had done what none of them dared. Saraya stepped forward, unable to speak, her voice caught between pride and humility. Eli looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. "Told you I could ride," he said softly. She laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. "You didn't ride the Ikran," she said. "You became one with it." He nodded, wiping rain from his face. "Maybe that's what being a real pilot means." The crowd cheered as thunder rolled far away. Not in anger, but in applause. The legend of the skybreaker and the humans spread that very day across the planet's skies. And every young pilot, human or alien, looked up and dreamed a little higher. The twin suns of Pandora Nine rose higher, painting the sky in silver and gold. The air was calm again. But the world below the cliffs would never be the same. Every Ikrani pilot, every cadet, and every elder stood in silence, staring at the human who had just conquered their sacred sky. Eli Ward stood before them, his jacket torn, his hands scarred, but his eyes bright with quiet strength. Beside him, the skybreaker knelt, its golden eyes soft, its wings spread like a royal banner. Saraya approached slowly, her heart beating fast, her wings trembling with emotion. The others made way for her, for she had been the one who challenged him. Now she could barely meet his eyes. Guilt and admiration mixing inside her like fire and wind, she stopped a few steps away, lowering her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I mocked you, human," she said. "I wanted you to fail. But instead you've shown us what it means to be truly fearless." Eli smiled faintly, his voice calm and warm. "I wasn't trying to prove anything," he said. "I just wanted to fly again." The words carried through the mountain air like a quiet echo. Even the skybreaker rumbled softly, lowering its head as if agreeing. From the back of the crowd, the alien commander stepped forward, his armor shining in the light, his face unreadable. He had been one of the loudest voices against humans joining the academy. Now he knelt slowly before Eli, placing a hand over his chest. "You have done what none of us dared," he said. "You have reminded us that the sky does not belong to one species. It belongs to those who have the courage to touch it." The crowd followed. One by one, every pilot, every student, bowing in silence. Saraya lifted her head, eyes filled with tears. "For years, we thought strength came from blood, from earth," she said softly. "But now I see, it comes from spirit." Eli turned toward the horizon, where the clouds glowed with golden fire. He spoke gently, more to himself than to anyone else. "On earth, we used to say the sky is endless," he said. "But I think it's not the sky that's endless. It's what's inside us." The wind rose again, carrying the sound of distant thunder. The skybreaker unfolded its wings. Sensing something in the air, Eli placed a hand on its neck. Smiling, "One more flight?" he asked. The Ikran let out a deep growl that shook the mountain, a sound of joy, not warning. Saraya wiped her tears, stepping closer. "You'll come back, right?" she asked. Eli looked at her, eyes warm. "If the sky allows it," he said. He climbed onto the skybreaker's back, the sunlight reflecting on his shoulders like a golden halo. The creature spread its massive wings, the ground trembling beneath it. Every Ikrani watched in silence, every heart lifted by the sight. The skybreaker roared once, a sound so powerful it echoed through the canyons for miles. Then they leapt. Wind exploded outward, dust spiraling as man and beast rose together. The academy towers shrank below, their banners fluttering in the new wind. Saraya watched until they became a shining speck in the heavens. She whispered, "He's not flying away. He's becoming part of the sky, high above the clouds." Eli opened his arms, letting go of the straps, feeling the air rush against him. For a heartbeat, he wasn't holding on. He was free. A skybreaker tilted its wings slightly, gliding smoothly through the thin air. Together, they soared past the sun's glare, higher than any living creature had ever dared. Below, the academy bells rang, marking the birth of a new legend. Children pointed toward the light and shouted the human's name. Poets and storytellers began to speak of the sky's true pilot, a man who had no wings but dared to believe. Saraya looked up once more, her silver eyes shining. She whispered to the wind, "Fly well, human." Then she spread her wings, soaring into the air herself. For the first time, her flight didn't feel like competition. It felt like honor. Far above the world, Eli looked down at the endless sea of clouds. He could feel the heartbeat of the Ikran beneath him. Strong and steady, the two of them, human and alien, had become one, bound not by power, but by understanding. He closed his eyes, smiling softly. "Yes, I really am a pilot," he murmured. The skybreaker roared once more, wings cutting through the sunlight. They vanished into the horizon, leaving a trail of golden mist behind. The legend of that flight would travel across galaxies, told for generations, that on Pandora 9, one human proved that courage, not wings, makes a true pilot. And somewhere beyond the stars, the sky smiled back.